Hello, my dear players. Welcome to today's video. And today, I think what we're going to talk about is some of my favorite towns and the plots that I've put on them. A lot of these are very small scale, little arcs, but a number of them I'm fond of and I've reused. And many of them are mysteries because I love making mysteries. Okay, the first one up is the town of Laocoon. Laocoon is a fairly sizable town. It's like in that in-between town of in-between area of a town and a city. It's fairly sizable. And what they have is that, as the players walk into the place, they get to go to a tavern, and they start hearing from the tavern about disappearances. Always at night, they've always disappeared, and, the adventurers think to themselves, okay, if we can figure this out, maybe we can make some money, or, help people, whichever motivation works. And so they begin to investigate. A lot of people of the town are blaming the tribe of Goblinkin that moved into town some time ago. And thus, that is a big lead. There is also noted to have recently come a paladin of light, who seems to be seeking out something he refers to as an impurity. So, the party can talk to the paladin, or they can go talk to the Goblinkin, or maybe they can talk around some of the taverns, get more details in general. Investigate some of the places people have disappeared at, so on and so on. If the party were to investigate the taverns, then what they would find is that the people always get really, really drunk at night, and then stumble out of the tavern, and they'll disappear in between the tavern and their home. That's the pattern. And then if they talk to the Goblinkin, or talk about the Goblinkin, some of the people that are more knowledgeable about them, they'll find out that the Goblinkin probably aren't at fault, because it's been happening since before they came. And there's a whole city lore and some drop lore about how Goblinkin work and all that type of stuff. But the Goblinkin would help in that they do have a seer of sorts in their midst, an old bugbear woman who would be more than happy to help. More than happy if you talk to her, though she's a little crazy. And if you talk to the seer, she'll talk about a darkness that she sees in the city, and she will point out a place to go to investigate said darkness. And she'll be said to be wary of a bestial madness. And then another lead they could follow up is the paladin. And if he is talked to, he will say that his order is about chasing down undead and cursed, and individuals who have been cursed to be inhuman, or unnaturally changed in some extreme manner. And the examples he gives are traditional undead, vampires, and he throws in lycanthropes as a thing that he looks for. And he says that following his divine sense, that he believes that something along those lines is in the city. So, if you go to investigate the area pointed out by the seer, or if you somehow ended up coming to this area more accidentally, then you will be encountered with a set of men guarding a warehouse. And there's a lot of ways to potentially handle the situation with the men, but they seem very dead in the eyes, and upon close inspection, despite that they are trying to hide their features from you, if you were to see their features, a lot of them fit the descriptions of the people that have been disappearing. And if you attempt to challenge them further, or to ask, or ask them about their identity too much, then they will turn into different types of lycanthropes, and they will attack you. And it isn't just one type. Some will turn into were-rats, some will turn into were-crows, and so on and so on. And thus a big fight will break out. It's a struggle, and yeah, try to push past it. And then, upon beating them and finding information from the warehouse, find that there's another warehouse outside of town where more things are happening. And there's apparently some big ritual that is going to be happening on the full moon, which is going to be, the next night. And, then you go there, whether in the day or the night, depending on whether you want to take a rest after the combat or what have you. And the combat would be different depending on whether you went in the day or the night. If you went in the day, they would be weakened. And if you went in the night, they would be strengthened due to the ritual. And what you would have is a strange white-haired woman with druidic-like abilities, and then several of the same were things that were fought before, plus 2 huge were things, a were boar and a were bear. And yeah, that would be the combat. The goal would also to be, if you're fighting at night, this would be harder. They would all have a temporary HP and some buffs and stuff, and you'd have to destroy the ritual circle and stuff. Be a whole thing. And yeah, the end of the mystery is that, the druidic woman was kidnapping people and turning them into lycanthropes, which bent to her will. And this also ties into some greater lore in that setting, where I have a concept called dark druids, which understand the druidic arts just as well as a normal druid does, but instead of using them to create this harmony between nature and themselves and try to protect nature, they do the opposite. They create a chaos in nature in order to create magical effects. Thus, why they can fuck around with lycanthropy, this unnatural curse. And then, yeah, that's one plot. The next plot that I enjoy is plot. I've used this mostly in one-shots, but you could put it somewhere else, which is the plot of what I like to call Lost Haven. Lost Haven is a town that just kind of mysteriously appears every so often, without much explanation, just kind of appears somewhere. And the adventurers would go here either, by accident, or by explicitly being called to it for some reason. And when they get there, they'll discover that a small girl has gone missing within Safe Haven. And thus, the adventurers go on to try and find her, try to talk to the people of Lost Haven, and figure out what's happened to her. And this would be, again, mostly a mystery, but it would be more like a horror kind of feel. Everything feels like it's out to kill you. Everything feels suspicious. Everything feels strange. And I also, personally, would put tons of references to different types of mythologies and folklore throughout the town. Because to build up to almost like a twist of the town itself, and that the town of Lost Haven is a haven for once powerful beings who have lost their luster. The bartender is run by a devil who was kicked out of the 9 hells and has lost most of his infernal power, who he now seems to just be a normal tiefling, at least at first glance. And he would be your primary information giver. He'd be the one helping you a lot of times. I like to make his name a reference. I call him Lewis Morningstar. And then I would have one of the NPCs that they have to talk to in order to get information about the missing girl, because they would have seen her get captured, which is an old lady and her family. And the family goes as follows: the grandchild named Ba, the middle-aged woman named Barbara, and then the grandmother named Baba. And when the players interact with her, with all 3 of them, trying to get information from them, they would keep insisting on trying to get them to stay, and there would also be these weird things of things suddenly being out of place, but without it being directly acknowledged. I would change their appearances and gender throughout conversation, casually referring, but very casually, not straight up pointing it out. And also referring to things that are there that weren't there before. And then when they ask about them, I just say that they aren't actually there, without really acknowledging that they've seen something. And this is effectively gaslighting the player. And if your players aren't up for that type of experience, that's fine. You can kind of articulate this in a different kind of scary way. There's a lot of ways, but I like to do the gaslighting thing, just because a lot of the players I've done this for tend to interact well with it, because it kind of conveys this idea of something as strange as happening. And ultimately what they would have to do is start making wisdom checks or even wisdom saves in order to engage with reality. And eventually, the quote-unquote 3 women would stop trying to do their thing on them, stop trying to mess with them, if they can resist the effects enough. And they would just, tell them, hey, I think they were captured by a coven. Coven lives in X old house, but you're going to have to figure out some way to get in it, because it's magically guarded. So, okay. They go off and figure out how to get into the place. They start asking, Lewis, the bartender, again. And there's back and forth trying to get it, and there's essentially like a magical passcode. And then actually when they get into the house, it itself is its own creepy thing, where the house doesn't really obey logic or physics. So you end up, it's almost like its own little demi-plane. And there's lots of possibilities with this, like doors that lead to nowhere, doors when open teleport you to a different room, and all kinds of weird, crazy stuff that you can pull. I recommend using your own imagination. And then at the end, they'll discover 4 old hags keeping the, actually 3 old hags. I don't know why I added a 4th. 3 old hags who seem to be references to the Fates. And they say that they need the child in order to, essentially, to make a new being of fate. And, yeah. And how you deal with that is up to you. But it is ultimately a fruitless endeavor. Like, even if you fight them, you probably won't win. It's just kind of set up to be a thing of, you can either choose to save yourselves and the child somewhat, but the fates would still be able to get what they want out of the child without the child being dead. Or you can try to fight the fates, in which case you will most likely die, but there's still like a chance. Clever fighting and all that. And yeah, that's one that I enjoy. Then the next one, my last one, which is one that I wish I've used more because it's a fun idea, which is you get a quest from like a quest board somewhere to go help a town, a very small village, with some bandits that ran through and wrecked the town. So you go there to help the village. But when you start talking to the villagers about what type of bandits they are, what they did, it doesn't seem to make much sense. They talked about them like they just went in, wrecked stuff, but didn't really hurt anyone or take anything, and then left. It's just, which, I mean, sure, bandits could do that, but like bandits usually take something, hurt some people, something. Doesn't seem to make much sense. And when you investigate, like, what bandits typically do compared to the types of damage done to the town, doesn't really make sense. The damage to the town seems, like, upon like investigation checks, seems a bit too controlled. Doesn't seem like this chaotic mess of people running and ransacking things. It seems more like just someone calmly breaking it and then leaving it, essentially. And so but when you try to question any of the villagers about it, they just keep reiterating that bandits did it, and when you ask them for more details, they just are unable to provide details. They get headaches when pushed too much. So instead, and there's one, more suspiciously, there's one old man in the village who everyone seems to know, and is able to provide you all the answers to your questions. He is far more articulate than anyone else, and even provides you with a map of where they are currently hiding and the setup that they have, somehow. And, you know, obvious, and if you try to question the old man or anyone else, you won't really get too far, so you eventually have to go see what the bandits are up to. And when you interact with the bandits, you find out that they are ex-military. They are soldiers who have left the country's military because they believe them to be too cruel. They haven't even passed through the town before. They just happen to be stationed happen to have essentially just picked a hole in the wall nearby and some ruins to hide in away from the military. They haven't even crossed past the villagers. And upon further investigation, it'll be found out that the old man is actually a type of mage hired by the military, and you will have to essentially do some battle with him, and he will use enchantment magics to turn the soldiers against you. And yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, those are 3 little arcs that could be done. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I've kind of done this off the top of my head, if you can't tell, because I didn't have a better idea. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed anyway. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.